Creative strategy, in essence, is not a new thing because it's knowing how to say the right thing to the right people at the right time. But for agency process wise and for role wise within brands and agencies as well, it is a newer service or it is a newer thing. So we're kind of in the wild west right now, similar to how CRO has been for the past, I guess, 5 to 10 years of figuring out what does the timeline look like? What do you do first, second, third? What process do you go into? So I think it would be good for us to talk through all of that. But maybe a good place to start with it is just looking at it from the client perspective of how we go from, sales process to onboarding and what that client experience is. Because I believe similar to bringing on a new team member to the agency or to your brand, the first 30, 60, 90 days for a new client to be working with us is the most important time. And it's a continued sales process, if you will, or a continued timeline for them to have confidence that choosing us was the right fit, because buyer's remorse is a very real thing. As an agency, we have built out a few things that we try to do to streamline the overall onboarding process, because while we want to personalize it the absolute best that we can, onboarding month 1, month 2, sometimes month 3 is generally your least profitable time as an agency, because so much extra work goes into it for research and communication, and that's okay. But when you're an agency like us that is month to month and we don't do a time-bound contract up front, you have to be as optimal as possible as you can with it. So a lot of things we're going to talk about. I'm kind of rambling at this point. I have some things that I can go to, but just from your experience, before we even go into kind of the step-by-step that we do, what's your perspective on the first 30, 60, 90 days? What do you think is a priority for that new client experience, Charlie?
I think it goes right back to the sales process. And I think it goes back to deciding as an agency the kind of service you're going to provide and being really, really clear with clients about what that is. Because, and it's really interesting, one of the things, sorry, my brain always goes way faster than my mouth can kind of keep up with. One of the things that I always say, and I always come back to this, is like, we're not an agency that's just going to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, because that's not what strategy is all about. And really interestingly, I saw a fantastic post on LinkedIn. I can't remember the name now, but she used that phrase in the exact opposite scenario and made it sound like a good thing. She was like, we're going to throw spaghetti at the wall and we're going to see what sticks. And it really threw me for six, because I thought, interesting, and again, I talk about this a lot, and I've probably said it about 70,000 times in the recordings that we've done, but it's all about positioning. So it goes right back to the sales process of how you're positioning with new clients, what type of agency you are, and what kind of strategy and creative service you're going to deliver. Because, I speak to agency owners who who deliver packages every single week, and they're probably operating on more like 75% iterations, whereas we at the moment do our creative packages once a month, and we do a lot of innovation and net new and iteration of what has worked as well. So we do a bit of a mixture of both. But again, if you've sold weekly creative packages with lots of iterations to the client in the sales process, if you then take a month to deliver stuff, you're going to have a really unhappy client, and vice versa. So if you tell a client, we're going to do loads of innovation, we're going to switch your strategy, we're going to really delve into what your value propositions are, we're going to help you to understand what your value propositions are as a brand, as a company, and we're going to figure all of that out together. If you're then just giving them iterations like every single month, then they're going to be really unhappy. So it comes back to, I think, really being defined as an agency, and or if you're a freelancer, as a freelancer, what kind of creative strategist you are and what kind of service you're going to deliver for the client.
And like you said, that all starts in the sales process. And that had my brain churning a little bit, because, we want our month 1 to be as optimal as possible, to where we are methodical with what we do, but also we have a process that is a recurring process. So some of onboarding can go on autopilot. We have a automation that we have set up to where if a new client comes on, they sign the invoice or pay the invoice, sign the contract, we will fill out a form, and we use make.com to then automate a lot of that next step. So we will automate a notification to the team in Slack on our team channel with a link to that client's website that got pulled from the form, and update that we have just signed them for a specific service. We will automatically, through that make.com, create their Slack channel for us internally to communicate about, create their Google Drive folder as a shared workspace or a shared data space, create their ClickUp project board, because we have our process that we follow in a template through ClickUp. We will send them access to the Google Drive folder. We will send them their onboarding form, all of those different things, right? One thing that I think we could improve on, or I think I could improve on, because I do the sales and then it gets handed off to you for the creative department, is that delivery of notes taken during the sales process to you. And I think that might even be something that we could add in to our automation as a form field for me to copy paste, is to give you that specific information, just packaged note wise. And even I think I would need to challenge myself even more, to not just give you notes, but to have specific questions I know I need to answer for you in my note-taking process during the sales process as well.
Yeah, I actually did work on this at my old agency, so I can, maybe see if I can remember what I put in there. But it was literally the sales person to the head of delivery or whoever's delivery person handover. And it had some things in there around, what's the person's style like? What's the communication style like? What were the main things that they like, the main pain points that they're coming to us to solve? Like really making sure that what the salesperson got from the the fact finding and scoping is passed to delivery team. Like that's so key, because the last thing we'd want to do is, them make a statement of something that's a real bugbear in the sales process, and then we go ahead and say that straight away on a call for argument's sake. So yeah, that kind of handover, I can help with that. We can have a look at that for sure.
That would be good. And as we have that onboarding flow going, we build our ClickUp project board. And one of the things that we have in there is an onboarding checklist. And onboarding checklist for new clients with our creative strategy service, that's something we could probably give away as well to people on LinkedIn or our newsletter there. But there's going to be some things that we look for technical wise. There is going to be some things that we look for asset wise. I'll start off, and then Charlie, you could share as well. But there's some, of course, things that you need, right? So you run an ads on or creating ads for TikTok, Facebook, whatever it is, you need account permissions. So you need that. We like to ask for Shopify store permission. And if the least we can get is marketing analytics, great. But we like to have Shopify store because as a creative agency, we are looking at performance. We're not just making creative that was given to us from a brief, right? So we want to be able to monitor on the platform and on the Shopify store if we can, and also Google Analytics or Triple Whale or Northbeam or whatever tracking tool that they have on their website for data that way. So we like to be able to get actually in the accounts to be able to look at the performance that way. We'll also make sure that we have a clear understanding of their target goals, right? So in our onboarding form, which we'll talk about in a bit, we ask about, target CPA. Do they care about CPA or ROA? We can go on more on that later. Those are just a few things, but anything else from kind of the onboarding necessities as you go into a client kickoff call or you're starting off an account that you say is a must-have on that checklist?
From a technical standpoint, I'd say that's pretty much all of it. Yeah. There are some other things that we've added to our onboarding forms recently, actually, from a more creative strategy side. And I think it's good to also explore these on like that first call as well around clients' preferences on creative. So one of the classic things is like, do you know the term ugly ads? And if you don't, we'll explain it. And can we make some ugly ads for you? Because again, and I've talked about this in a previous episode too, like, if you don't give or like seek insight from the clients around what they expect or what they like or what they don't like, you're going from, hey, new client, let's have a chat. And then the next thing is they've got the creatives that you're asking them to approve or, you're giving them to run in the ad account, and they've not seen anything in between. That can be really, really a shocking experience for that client and really kind of not be what they had in their mind and cause a lot of issues. So really making sure you understand like what the client, as much as you can, I guess, upfront, like their preferences, to understand them is like really, really key. So some of the basic questions that we'll ask is, hey, are you comfortable with, platform native, UGC style, content creator style content, or do you prefer really highly polished style content, or can we do both? So we can kind of get a temperature check of where they are on that sliding scale. Another one that we'll ask is around, are you okay with like really hard sell ads like buy now, ships today? Or do you prefer a softer, more like brand awareness, brand education approach? And that's not to say that if a client gives us one answer or the other, we'll only ever deliver that. We will challenge them sometimes and say, hey, we see that you like a more maybe brand awarenessy type approach, but this is direct response marketing. You are spending ad dollars and we want to get real dollars back in your account. So we're going to have to meet in the middle here a little bit, push a direct response a little bit more, but in a way that you're comfortable with. But we ask those kinds of questions early on so we can get an understanding of where their head is at and their preferences, so that we can make sure that we're delivering what they might. It's not necessarily about delivering what they might approve, but making sure that we're not on completely different pages.
Yeah, and that's a conversation we had in our previous episode with Sarah Levenger as well, which is a great one to listen to, which is, you are delivering creative that ideally speaks to the customer and will perform, but you're also delivering creative that needs to align with the vision that the brand owner, the CMO has in their head of how the creative should look. Sarah shared with us one thing that she has done, and we've done something similar, just in a different method, but she would ask them to create a Pinterest board of examples of creative that they like. And so that she could see, are they wanting to look like their competitors, and how could we maybe move away from that? Or do they have a specific style that they want to go with? And that's very important, because in the sales process, ideally whoever is doing the sales did a great job of sharing how you go about strategy and how you go about process and all of that. But if there is no clear effort to understand what the client's vision is for creative, you're going to deliver a package and it's either going to go one of two directions. It's going to go great or it's going to go very south. And understanding early on through your onboarding form, if, like you were saying, do you like ugly ads? Do you like UGC TikTok style creative, or should it be polished? Can you select from these creatives ones that you do like and don't like? It's very hard, if you don't do those things, to translate the vision in their head of what they're wanting. And there's going to be a very bad sticker shock's not the right term, but sticker shock when it comes to them getting their first creative. And then you're going to be going more into relationship recovery and repair than anything, which is going to be detrimental for the entire process.
You definitely don't want that in month one, first package delivery. That's what we want to avoid at all costs. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So some additional questions that we look at when it comes to onboarding form are things like words or phrases you want to avoid using, words or phrases that you might like using. So what lines up with your brand, what doesn't? Is there any marketing efforts that you've done in the past that tanked or that did very bad, and tell us why that is, or ones that did great and why that is? What specific products, collections, categories do you like to prioritize? So is there a hero product we should be focused on, or is that up to us to figure out? Or,
that's a really key one, actually, because, and I was going to sort of say that as well a second ago when you were talking about Shopify Access. That's another thing that I would suggest as well, looking at as part of creative strategy, is what are the best selling products? Because you want to put best foot forward in your paid ads, but there are other things and insights that you're not going to know without asking that conversation to the client, which is like, okay, so we know for a fact if we sell, I don't know, this pair of leggings, like people come in for those leggings, and then when they see how amazing they are, they then go on to buy the matching, I don't know, sports bra, top, hat. So we really need you to focus on the leggings. That's what we need. Like that's the first product of a really great, healthy LTV customer. So that kind of stuff is really important. But the other thing as well is the high margin products. Like it could be that their bestseller is really, low margin, and actually they don't want us to push for that. So, as much as it's great to be strategic, look at the data and, make some suggestions, don't make the mistake of making assumptions. Make sure you're asking those right questions as well to give the client the chance to input.
And we have two thoughts from that. First one, kind of a response, and then the second one is something that we can maybe add into our process. Ideally, they know the hero product. They have that situation where they have a product that brings somebody in the door, and then they can either cross-sell, upsell, whatever it may be. And if that's the case, that's a key opportunity for you to slow down to speed up as a creative strategist and realize, okay, my creatives can achieve sales, but my creatives can also increase ROAS by focusing on creatives that speak to that cross-sell or that bundle or that upsell opportunity that way, which can be huge for brands. And then the thing that I was thinking we could add in to our process. So we have the final questions on our onboarding form focus on things like, in the next 3 to 6 months, do you plan on launching a new product? Do you plan on expanding to a new region, rebranding? Do you plan on having any major sales? Do you plan on changing your target personas or business objectives? We like to ask if they plan on doing any of those things in the next 3 to 6 months so that we don't build this whole grandiose plan for testing and then it needs to be pivoted or changed, right? Because if you don't ask it up front, you're assuming, and then you might get to where you need to change it. But one thing, while we ask if they plan on having any major sales, we don't just clearly ask for a marketing calendar like we clearly ask for a brand guide. And that may be one thing that we could add in is just, do you have a PDF, a Google Sheet, whatever, with a marketing calendar for the next 3 to 6 months that you can share with us? Because that could align with creative strategy perfectly.
Totally. That's a really great idea. And I ask that on our monthly calls, is there anything upcoming in the next month or two that you want us to support with? But yeah, even better to get it on onboarding. And it also shows proactivity. Hey, if you've got stuff coming up in the next 3 months, we want to be there to support you with that, with the right creatives, with the right approach. Proactively asking those questions just shows a level of organization and can help the client to be more organized as well, because they might think, oh dang, no I don't, but I really should do that actually. Right, let's have a look at that, let's work on that so we can give it to the agency but also have clarity ourselves.
Yeah, and it's a partnership too, right? So for the agency to succeed, it's very helpful if the client, like we said, knows those hero products. It's not detrimental. There's a lot going on. We understand if the brand doesn't, but if they have the hero product with the cross-sell, if they have the marketing calendar, because then creative strategy comes about aligning with the brand more on their efforts and less about creating your own efforts and your own initiatives and all of that, which either work, right? But regardless, throughout that entire process, one thing that you've touched on and I think would be worth talking through is just the importance of communication, the importance of soft skills. One of my biggest gripes when it comes to just agency world in general is lack of proactive communication and project management, because that is what stalls performance and partnership. And like you said, if you are onboarding a client, let's say from the time you have the kickoff call to when your creative is ready, it's 2 weeks, right? If you're not talking to them for 2 weeks after the first touch point of a kickoff call, you don't even send them a post-call recap of the kickoff call, but if you're not talking to them for 2 weeks, that's huge. Now, every client's different. Some people might not want to talk, but read the room. And in our process, I like to always say in month 1, for creative strategy, for media buying, there should be a subtask card somewhere throughout that process that make the person in charge reach out through email and reach out through Slack or whatever we're communicating to give some updates at the very least.
Yeah, definitely. Because they have likely just dropped thousands of dollars on an invoice. And where the heck is this person? It's really, really important. One of the things that we have on our deck with the kickoff call that I love, that I know you put on there, Colby, was, right, these are the stages. It's like a little map, and it's like, you are here. And it's kind of like, we're at this stage, and it tells them exactly what the next stage is and how many working days away that's going to happen, what the next stage of that is and how many working days away that's going to happen. And that's really great. And clients have actively come and asked me about those dates before. Oh, are we still on track to have the creatives next Friday? Yep, we are. Cool. And so they really do value that, that kind of timeline and really knowing what they can expect and when. And that's super key. And one of my other favorite ways of handling that is when let's say I've just got off a call, and they'll know what the next step is, when it's going to happen, because that's on the deck. I'll reiterate that in the email as well. And I'll usually buy myself a bit of time in there, buy myself a bit of grace, and just really proactively manage expectations and say, hey, so we're going to be doing this next. So don't worry if you don't hear from me from a few days. Like, we're going to be busy squirreling away in the background. Like, just reach out if you have any questions, and we'll be back in touch soon. And that's just, you know, then they think, oh, okay, I don't have to panic in 2 days when I haven't heard from her because she said that's what was going to happen. So cool. Yeah, I'm not going to worry. And I think those types of proactive communication can just really, really de-escalate, not even de-escalate, stop any like concerns from even beginning or starting.
Yeah, because I think it's very easy when you become seasoned or expert at something to let it become your second voice or just back of hand, to where it's like, oh, okay, everybody knows this because it's so used to me. Like, I've been doing this for 10 years. Everybody knows it, but that's not the case, right? And let's like just picture in your head, you move to a new city and you need to go get groceries or something, right? You don't know the roads to be able to navigate to get to where you're going. You don't know that timeline to get there. When you've lived somewhere for a long time, your hometown, let's say, you can be sitting in your room and look at the clock and say, oh, okay, I know I'll need to leave in 10 minutes if I want to get there by 12:30 because this is where I'm going and this is how long it generally takes. It's the same thing for a client that you're working with. As you're selling a non-tangible service, if you don't lead communication with the process, there's a personal bias, then it's very difficult for them to understand what they should be looking for and where they're going. And the mind can get idle, right? They know that performance is the goal, but leading with that process helps them understand what to expect and what they're going to be seeing and when to expect it as well. And it creates comfort because you can't sell a non-tangible service solely based off of deliverables because they don't know the road. So they don't know when they should be expecting what or what it should look like.
Totally. Yeah. That's my account management golden rule of thumb. It's like, if the client has to ask me what's going on or when something's coming, I've dropped a ball, I've failed somewhere. And that's sometimes a good thing because it's like, right, where's my process broken? Where have I fallen down here? Where can I be better? But that has to be like a signal that something needs to change. So even if, you know, I've just delivered the creative, let's say, and they're not going to get creative again for another 3 weeks, like I'll, you know, deliver that creative when it's all signed off. I'll be saying something like, great, we're going to get that in the ad account. We'll be back in touch early next week with, you know, a first look at performance on how that creative's doing. Or it might be like, right, cool, right, we're going to get that live and we'll send you the report as normal on the X day, or we'll see you on that call. But if you've got any questions in the meantime, just give me a shout. Like, I'm always not leaving them ever in a space. Like, you could give me a client name now and say like, where are we at with them? And I'll be like, oh, they know that I'm going to send them that tomorrow, or they know that we're probably not going to speak again until the call. Like, I always make sure that everything's left in a state of the client knows where we're at and the client knows what's happening next. If they have to ask me, my communication hasn't been sufficient enough and I need to go and fix that.
That was a good takeaway an early manager of mine gave me, which is try to frame emails in has been done versus will do, because that even leaves clients on or just whoever you're emailing on a hangnail of, okay, I know it's going to get done, but when will it get done that way, right? So sometimes you have to use will do, like if it's something that physically can't be responded to and done today, but still, like you're saying, giving timelines and giving expectations of things to be done. And as we've gone through, you know, kind of linear process of sales to operations or sales to delivery team, we have our onboarding flow, we have our questionnaire, and we're talking through the onboarding form being completed. At the end of our onboarding form, we include a link to Calendly that is a shared Calendly link, which I need to update now that we have a new senior media buyer with his availability as well. And actually, we need to create two, one for just creative strategy clients and then one for media buying clients with both of y'all. But once they've filled it out, they schedule a kickoff call. We have to where we only do kickoff calls on Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, because generally Monday, Tuesdays are very heavy for us with deliverables. And then we have a minimum 4 business day gap in between the day that they're scheduling and the earliest call that they can get on. And the reason we do that is because we fill that time with our research process, because ideally the kickoff call is not, they've already filled out the onboarding form. So they don't want to get on another call and answer the same questions again and explain to you everything. Now, we do ask those some key questions if they need elaborating, but we want to bring solutions, answers, research. So there's that gap in between scheduling and kickoff call, because that's where our research process starts. We start looking at doing research on the voice of customer, the brand's marketing messaging on their website, on their ads, on competitors, their account audit, all of that. And I think let's dive into that a little bit and just kind of talk through like that process. And is it in that order from your perspective? Customer research, voice of customer, where do you start when you're looking at researching a new brand?
Voice of customer is always where I start. So the testimonial analysis stuff. And the reason for that is, so yeah, there's a few different steps to the process, how we do it at the moment. We'll do some testimonial analysis, and we also look at the client and the client's competitor's website to see what kind of messaging motivators is kind of the language that we use. So what motivators are being used there. A motivator would be something like, I don't know, financial savings. What's motivating that person to buy, basically. There are rational ones and there are also emotional ones. So there could be an emotional motivator of like, I don't know, safety, if it's a baby gate or, you know, protect your family type of product. So yeah, motivators is probably worth just defining that, because I'll maybe mention it a few times. Looking on, like I said, looking on client website and client competitor websites for those types of motivators is also part. But the reason I like to start with testimonials is because I don't want to be led by the brand and what they've already done. I want to be led by the behavioral insight of their actual customers. So if you start with looking at the brand's ads and the brand's website, you automatically get this bias around, oh, so their main USP is speed, because that's what they talk about over and over again on the website or in their ads. But actually, if their customers are actually saying, no, the reason I buy it is because it's cool as hell, like then you're kind of going to miss that insight. So yeah, I always start with the testimonials. And Sarah Levenger, I think it was actually on an episode with you, Colby, an older one. She said something that's really stuck with me, always stuck with me, which is if you ask a founder, an e-com growth manager, whatever level the person you're working with is the agency, when you ask the client, what are your main, like, you know, USPs or end user benefits, or like, why do your customers buy from you? They will always have an answer. Well, they hopefully will. They wouldn't be a client if they didn't, but because we'd get them out the sales process quicker. But they should have an answer of like what they believe is the reason why their customers buy. But when you ask them, hey, where's the data on that? There very rarely is data, because there is a lot of confirmation bias happening there. And that's cool. That's fine. Like that is part and parcel of life and marketing in general. But that's why I always start with the reviews, because I want to hear it from the customers first and then see if that aligns with what's on the website, so that when we go to that research phase, I can say, right, when we looked at your testimonial analysis, we found a lot of your customers were actually motivated by your ability to speed this up. But you don't talk about that on your website at all. There's a huge opportunity there to talk about speed, because this is the most common thing that your customers are talking about in your reviews. Because the other really big part of it as well is, if I see speed is the main USP or whatever on the testimonial reviews, and I talk about that in the creative and the strategy and the ads, but they don't talk about it on the website, you're then creating a really disjointed experience, which isn't going to, you know, isn't going to do your conversion rate any favors.
Yeah, it's kind of like with your order of customer reviews before brand research or even competitor research, it's kind of like becoming the customer and having their mindset. So then as you're looking at the marketing messaging and the website, the ad copy on Facebook, you can then much easily say like, oh, wait, I don't care about that. Or, oh, wait, I do care about that, because everybody's talking about it, right? And one thing that popped into my mind, and this may make sense, it may not, I kind of just drew it together from something I noticed in the past, but I feel like if a brand has a very defined or central marketing messaging that they're already using, you may see it in the customer reviews. And I'll give you a quick example, and then I'll give you the reason for it. So I was prepping for an interview for this podcast with the president of True Classic. Great interview. Go listen to it if you haven't. And I was looking at their customer reviews. I was just looking for different sources for questions to be working on. And I noticed in their customer reviews, it seemed like everybody was talking about the fit of the shirts and the quality of the fit and how they fit better than other brands and how it made them look slimmer, right? If you look at their marketing messaging, that is their marketing messaging. That is their angle in the market. So it was almost like their central marketing messaging and the power of it and the push behind it, I don't want to say trained everyone, but made that the primary focus of everybody's reviews, because that's what they were looking for when they got the product. And then it validated when they tried on the product. And I feel like where I'm going with this is if you notice that, if you notice that customers keep talking about one specific feature or benefit, and you check the marketing messaging and the ad copy, and that is what they're talking about, and it performs well, well then as a creative strategist, job might shift a little bit to, of course, try to find some new messaging angles, but iterate that one versus creating something whole net new, because it sounds like that brand would already have a messaging angle that's working for them and that they need to double down on.
Yeah. And I think, it can be quite daunting. Like imagine, like for argument's sake, let's say True Classic hired us tomorrow, Colby at brightclick.com, if you're interested. True Classic. Let's say they hired us tomorrow, that would probably be quite a daunting task as a creative strategist. Is like, well, what do we do here? Like, they really got it nailed down. And I think a lot of, creative strategists, copywriters, potentially agencies can feel a bit daunted with things like that and feel like, well, that message is already cracked. But let's just take that as an example. The fit of the shirts is what everybody loves. That's why they buy it. They get that actual experience when they buy the product. So what they were promised happens. They're so happy about it. They go and write a review. Well, what does a great fitting shirt mean for the buyer? So it could be then you go around, there's so many different ways you can kind of take that direction. It's like, okay, so first date, you want a great fitting shirt. You can do a whole kind of angle about that. Meeting your girlfriend's parents for the first time, don't want to look like a scruff, have a great fitting shirt. Like, those are just terrible examples, and I'm not a copywriter, but just with one thing, like that's one USP of the brand, or like the main USP or the main end user benefit. And you think, oh, we've got the benefit, job done. No, there is still like infinite ways you can angle that and infinite ways you can position that. You could have great fit to overcome insecurities about your weight, great fit to feel confident in the next job interview. Like, there are so many emotions that you can connect to that and so many different ways you can angle that, which it's not the end of the road.
And it's almost, I would say it almost though means you could skip step one, which we'll go into our process of how we go about testing in a later episode. But I'd almost say you could skip step one of figuring out your messaging theme and go into step two of figuring out how to display it or how to communicate it, how to put it in a creative, like, for example, there's a brand on LinkedIn that is a t-shirt that hides sweat or hides moisture on the t-shirt. And I saw them post an ad on LinkedIn recently as an example where they had just like a shot. It might have included the face, I don't know, but it was mainly the mid torso where the shirt was. And the person was holding a water balloon. They put it inside the shirt, popped it. You saw no water on the outside. So it was like a demonstration ad, right? And so they know their messaging. They know their core focus on messaging. As a creative strategist, your job would be how to angle it, how to now make new content around that. But like I said, that'll be later discussion with this. So we look at customer reviews and we're looking for those themes. And then you go into what step next for the overall process.
So yeah, customer reviews, voice of customer stuff. I want to be looking at, motivators. So like I said before, trying to figure out like what made them buy, what motivated them to make the purchase. But I also want to see if I can find any problems as well. So what were the problems they were facing, which led them to buy this product? Because that's where we can start to, play with emotion and really explore different types of messaging. Another place, so at the moment we do use ChatGPT. So we've got some I would say for me, definitely very thoroughly tested GPT prompts that have gone through the ringer and failed me many times and therefore been tweaked many times. But we've got some great prompts that we use to extract this kind of information. So that is a bit, kind of streamlined and efficient. The more inefficient, but still really valuable research that I would suggest people do is getting on Reddit, Quora, like any of those types of more qualitative research, because that's where you can really get into the pain points. So Alex Cooper was on a webinar recently. Great content. If you've not checked him out, check him out. And he was going through his research process for an anti-dandruff brand. And so he was going on to Reddit, and it's a male brand, and he just typed like dandruff men in the search bar, and the gold that he got from there wasn't even about that brand specifically. So it doesn't have to be like going and saying, okay, so what are people saying about Head and Shoulders? I don't know if that's a brand in the US, but it's a big one in the UK. Oh, good. So yeah, he didn't go and like look at, okay, what's my brand? That wasn't his brand. But what are people saying about my brand? He was like, what are people saying about this problem? And the gold that you can uncover there is like, you know, dandruff makes me feel this, like I'm sick of all the flakes on my shoulders, like I can't wear black jumpers anymore because I have all this like dried skin, like I have to wear this color. And you get all this gold mine of like, information, because people won't necessarily say that in reviews. They might not say, I can finally go outside in my black jumpers again. Like they might not actually say that. They might say, yeah, I've tried loads of other products. This one's finally worked. That's still really great. But, you know, going into that Reddit and that bit more qualitative hunt for information will get you those really specific things that you can then use in your messaging and use in your creatives.
Yeah, and Reddit's great too for even seeing things like customer journey. There was a client we worked with that was wanting to transition from like incentive-based offer of giving away certain things to more value-based messaging. And in Reddit, we were noticing that people were talking about their purchasing journey because someone said that they saw it and they were looking at using the service. And then somebody else said, hey, wait until you get like your third or fourth email, you're going to get a higher discount offer. You're going to get a higher incentive offer that way. So we found that out through Reddit, right? And then that raises a whole different conversation of, do we need to do some SEO play to bury all that so that people can't see it? But customer reviews, we do that. And then, so we look at customer reviews for brand and also competitors. And then we can understand, like you said, the motivators, the reason behind purchasing. We can also understand from comparing brand and competitors of the pros and cons of each and seeing what people do or don't like about the competitors. And then once we have the voice of customer, we'll start looking at the website and marketing copy, or the website and ad copy, to understand what are the brands, what are the customers talking about? What's the frequency ratio or percentage of things mentioned that we have, and order them top to bottom? And then what are the brands talking about? What motivators do they mention? What emotions they mention? And where do we have alignment, and what are we missing? What do the customers care about that the brands are not talking about? And once we can compare those, we can see some gaps.
100%, exactly that. Like I was saying with the reviews, if, you know, X motivator, financial savings comes up all the time, but it's not even mentioned on the website, then chances are it's not going to be in the ad copy either. And if it isn't, there's your first kind of opportunity. That's a poor example. Financial savings isn't a very like emotion-led one. But yeah, it highlights those opportunities super, super quick. And one of my other favorite hacks, like one of the things that I did we were working with a brand that was it was clip-on veneers. That's what it was. I was like, his teeth, is it whitening? It was clip-on veneers. And when I went through the competitor testimonials, I found loads of things like, oh, they don't fit right. They rub on the gum line. I can't eat with them in. It gives me a lisp. And the brand that we were working with didn't have those problems. Like in the reviews, none of those things were mentioned. And if they were mentioned, it was like, they don't rub on the gums like the other brand that I tried. So that was like instantly, I was like, us versus them. Great creative execution. So you can really, that's the kind of other gold mine of looking at competitor analysis, is like finding where your competitors are falling down and making ads that show customers how you don't do those things.
And once we have looked at the, we're looking at marketing messaging, we're looking at ad copy, but there is a difference between the efforts in those two. And when we look at the creative, which we're looking at marketing messaging on the website, there's a bit of opportunity for bias or opportunity for us to have opinion on this or that. But when we're going into the final step of the research, it's data-based. It's backed by data, which is looking at auditing the account, auditing the ad account that we're going to be making creative for, or the ad accounts we're going to be making creative for, and understanding the ad copy, the creative performance, and seeing what actually has done well in the past and what hasn't. Tell me a little bit about your mindset behind what you're looking for as we go into the actual ad account or accounts audit.
Yeah, so really just kind of, I think you've summarized it really well there. So I would really be looking at what has got best performance over time. I try not to look too far back because things change, markets change, consumer behavior changes. I'd probably say maximum I would look back is maybe a year, but probably about 6 months is where I would start. And then I would be quite literally just ordering the ad account by either CPA or ROAS. And then I would make sure I was only looking at anything that had like double-digit sales minimum. Like, every ad account's got those handful of ads with 3 sales that have got 729,000 ROAS or something ridiculous like that. But that's not stable performance. So we don't look at that. We want to ignore that, look at the stable proven concepts. And then I'm always looking for patterns. So what I do, and there's probably a way more efficient way to do this, but the way I like to do it is take screen grab of the ad as a whole. So creative, first 3 lines of copy, headline, and maybe top 5, and I'll put them in a row, like next to each other, like drop them in a Canva deck or whatever, just as a screenshot, so I can see really, really easily at a glance what are the commonalities here. So it might be that there's a certain angle in the head, every single headline, or it might be that we work with a brand who have floating sunglasses. I did this exercise for them, and every single one of the top performing creatives had water in the creative. Now that's not a shock because the main USP is that the sunglasses float, but there were tons of creatives that didn't have water in the shot. People wearing the sunglasses, like holding a fishing rod on land, whatever. There's tons of different ways. But when you put them side by side like that, you get really kind of jump out insights that are like, okay, this is a really good starting point. Well, what can I learn from this? What can I take away, and what do I need to make sure that I replicate going forwards?
You just gave me an idea that unfortunately I'm going to have to gatekeep at this time on the podcast for a future.
We tell me later though. We tell me after.
That would be very beneficial. Thank you for saying what you just said there. And then I will leave it at that. We will talk on that offline, but we go through that process and then we create our research presentation deck. And this deck that we have, and I keep saying this, but we could probably give this out on LinkedIn as well, is a deck for us to share our learnings with the client on the kickoff call so that they can see that we're already doing what we can to understand their brand, hopefully as well as they do, right? Obviously, it's hard to say, I know a brand better than the founder because they're the founder, but hopefully as well as they do, or at least a new perspective or angle. And from a high level, and then we can go into what specifically the template includes, but we're adding those customer review insights. We're adding the website analysis, the marketing copy analysis, the competitor analysis, the account audit. But just kind of talk to me through, your hands-on setup process of that research deck for clients. And then we could even talk about a little feedback on how clients have received it, because I know we've had some pretty good feedback from clients.
Yeah, one of the things I'd say with that is my main goal here is to, with any presentation deck with a client, I guess, is like not to deliver a monologue because people can get very disengaged. And whilst all the findings of what we've done is really new and exciting for us, it might not all feel new and exciting for them. Sometimes it will because they maybe haven't looked at the analysis in the way that we have, but sometimes it won't be. So, be really cognizant of that, read the room, again, be dynamic and kind of, take the cues of where you need to speed up and where you can spend a bit more time. But I try and make sure that it's not too repetitive, because sometimes if them and their competitors all have the same angles on the website, in their ad copy, in their reviews, you can find yourself, so the top 3 motivators in this was this, and the top 3 was this, and you can get quite repetitive. So try and keep it, super engaging, or, keep it efficient where you can. And I would quite often change slide and be like, no surprises here, competitor number 2, exactly the same, next slide. Like, I wouldn't kind of go through it all again and pull out all the examples. So that's kind of, in terms of pulling it together, we tend to order it by brand, and then by like the actual piece of research. So competitor 1, testimonial findings, website findings, ad copy findings, testimonial 2, and then obviously, competitor 2, same thing, and then go into the brand specific stuff, and then it will be the same things. So the testimonials, website copy, ad copy. Then obviously with actual brands that we're working with, we can go a lot deeper on the insights because we've got the access to stuff to then dig into demographics, which is really important. So we'll do a demographic analysis. So what gender, what age groups typically, what can we learn about the markets from Google Analytics, and from what we've seen in like ad performance. I wouldn't say this so much now, but have a check, look in the last 6 months, have they ran interest targeting, and were there any interest audiences that performed really well? You know, they might have ran a yoga interests audience, and so there's a great creative angle right there, like yoga mums, these yoga pants are for you, versus, I don't know, hikers. Maybe the hikers ad set didn't do very well. So you can kind of start to try and gather insights from the ad account as well around demographics, and then therefore what direction you can take the creative strategy and from a persona perspective as well. And then opportunities. So this is where I would make sure we spend the most time, because they know what's on their website. They hopefully know a little bit about what's in their reviews. So that bit, we're probably not really teaching them anything new, but we do want to spend time there to show that we understand it. So there's a balance there, but the opportunities is what they've hired us to do. So if we're, kind of saying, right, these are the motivators, these are the 3 main things that your reviews talk about. So these are the things that we're going to do. I think can be quite underwhelming for a client. Again, they've just dropped however many thousands on an invoice because they want you to improve their performance. So going in and saying like, oh, we're going to recreate all the messaging that you've already done is going to not always land very well. So I'm always making sure that I'm looking for those opportunities, and I make it my mission to find something, at least 2 or 3 new things that I can share with them to say, this was in the reviews, but I didn't see it anywhere on the website. I would love to try this in the ad creatives. And would you be open to like maybe even doing a landing page to keep the congruency and bring something really fresh and bring something really exciting is kind of what I'm always trying to do. And that's where I spend the most time on that call, is like looking at those opportunities together.
So much information to absorb in a call. I've said this to you and the team many times, I'm not everyone. I understand that. The way I consume information is like, if it was me, it'd be best to consume it by myself with a Loom video and then talk about it. So we present a lot of information. I think with this call, with any client call, but with this call especially, keeping it engaging, like you said, and not focusing on it being a presentation as much as it being a conversation, and asking questions. Hey, we noticed this in the research. Have you seen this as well? What's your thoughts on this? How do you feel about X, Y, and Z? And then one other thing that I learned recently, because I was watching a Y Combinator video presentation about pitching to investors, and he was talking about the presenter was talking about some of the worst things that you can do. And one of them was, if an investor is looking at your pitch deck and ask about X, so ask about your team or ask about your traction or whatever, the worst thing you can do is say, okay, we'll get to that slide in a couple of minutes. Let's keep going. If they're an investor and they want to know about that, skip everything else and go straight to that and talk about it, and then go back to your flow. Like, don't feel like there's a rigid, and that I think follows with this as well, which is there's so much information and we have a structure with our template of this order, X, Y, Z, or 1, 2, 3. But if a client asks a question on this call, on a monthly report call, break the order, like break it and go where they have question about. You obviously need to kind of control focus a little bit to focus on what's important, but move around as you need to. And then the last thing, go ahead, and then I'll bring my last thing in.
I was just going to say, I've seen like really senior team members and like people who, I really, really respect and who are amazing at their job fall at this hurdle sometimes. And it's like, it can be hard to read the room, but like if you're kind of going through a deck or a slide with stats and the client is, I don't know, like maybe I just have a sixth sense and I can tell they're disengaged, like I'll just then skip all of the slides that have got those numbers on. I'll maybe like do like one key highlight, but I won't like read through. Or if they kind of get on the call and they say, do you know what, like I'm really familiar with the performance from last month. Like, can we just like talk about what's happening next month? And then again, like really, really talented, senior, competent people will then still go through the slides of the performance, and they'll think they're doing it like faster, but they're just reading the bullet points really quickly. And it's really hard to then be like, just skip it. Just don't even go on that slide. Just go to slide 7. Like go. But it's
the job is not necessarily
valuable skill.
Present all the information on the deck. The deck is there to give as a takeaway, right? Like if something is not hitting with that client, this call is also a great time to test and see what the client cares about and what they don't, and then angle your monthly presentations based off of that. And there's 2 more things that I would say. One resonates with that, but I'll save it for last, is on this deck, there needs to be a section where you share concerns. I saw something recently, Nick Shackelford put up on Twitter, which aligns with this, where he said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, if you tell somebody something can get done and it can't, and then it doesn't get done, that's on you for saying it could get done. Which, as you're looking at all the research you've just done, and you know what raw assets they have in photography and videography, and you now hopefully know their expectations from onboarding of the vision they have for their creative, and you know what the customers care about. If there's anything asset-wise or anything that might be limiting performance, they don't have enough photography or videography, they can't get UGC, they can't do X, Y, or Z, you need to put that in writing on the slide deck, walk through it with them, and then have them verbally commit, agree, whatever, to helping solve these things or understanding that there are going to be barriers, and then send it in a wrap up email afterwards with it in writing again. Because you can't get 3 months into the project and say, oh, we failed because we didn't have the photos that we needed, or we didn't have the videos that we needed. That should have been addressed up front completely.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, like, you know, you will sometimes I'll get struck with an idea or like some inspiration, and it might be $1 million idea, but if you don't have what you need to execute that, then it's a negative dollars idea. And so, you know, you have to get the client buy-in on that and get them, like you said, to commit to doing the other side of like what needs to happen to make that possible. One of the things that, and actually I've said to you that I need to work on this for us. One of the things that I put together in my last role was like an onboarding deck, which had expectations, an SLA, kind of like, you know, setting service level agreements, setting expectations up front. And like, it's not just like we'll, you know, reply to comms, same working day, blah, blah, blah. But it's also like setting expectations on the approach to how we work. And actually the end slide was what we'll commit to and what we expect you to commit to. And really telling the client that up front, which is like, if we need, you know, XYZ content, you will go and get it. If, you know, when we ask you not to touch the ad account, don't touch the ad account. Like, you know, those types of things. But I think just, yeah, being really upfront and really kind of managing expectations, because yes, that call, I want the client to feel really excited about opportunities. Yes, I want to come with no ideas that get them fired up and feel, yep, I've made the right decision. 0 buyer's remorse in this house. But I don't want to promise stuff that can't deliver. So you're right. It's like a really, really fine balance of like, okay, these are the ideas that I've had, but it's going to take X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and
Can
I think,
you commit to that?
Kind of like we were saying earlier, there's so much information that we give them, so much that needs to be absorbed. We have things they need to agree to. Ending this, just like you do with the sales process, just like you do with ideally your all communications you have a client, is next steps, focus on the timeline, focus on the process, wrap everything up, make sure you send a post-call email with next steps for the client, and narrow their focus. Don't give the client 13 things that they need to do in the next month, because they're probably busier than we are, right? They need to do 1 or 2 key things. What are their priorities? But focus on next steps that they need to do. Focus on next steps and timelines for when they're going to get their first batch of creatives and what they should expect there. And then wrap it up with making sure that there is understanding. And we like to set up the recurring call that we do. We do a biweekly call for month 1, sometimes month 2, and then monthly call going forward from there. I like to set it up on that call so we can go ahead and get it in the books and have that client going. Now, we are 54 minutes in. We might clip off some of the beginning, but we are 54 minutes in. We still have quite a bit to talk about with our high-level creative strategy process. We have our creative strategy planning process. We have actual execution process of creative, which could be its own episode, and our testing process as well. Unfortunately, we were going to look at our creative strategy planning process on this episode, but I think we have exhausted our listeners by this point probably. So we might need to pause that one and be on the lookout for upcoming episode. We will have a part 2 to this, maybe a part 3, maybe a part 4 as we go through those things, the creative strategy planning process, execution, and testing.
I always do this, but can I just add one more thing?
Go ahead.
Yes, you're getting like, in the flow of my crazy brain and lack of structure and control of it. The one other thing that I will say that we do, because it does relate to the deck, I promise it's related, is this research deck is, and it leads us into like, we'll do a whole episode on this next time, but really we can't kind of wrap up that deck without saying the end outcome of that is a 90-day plan. So what we'll then do is, I mentioned motivators, I mentioned, problems, pain points, that kind of thing. We'll convert all of that into like a 90-day plan in terms of the messaging that we're going to focus on. So that really is the main outcome of all of that research. The main goal of all of that deck is to show the workings, if you like, and then really summarize that in a 90-day plan for the client, which is then, here's everything that we've learned. Here's what we're doing with it. This is the direction that we're going in. And it's that first opportunity for the client to say, oh, no, actually, I think you've maybe gone down the wrong path with that bit of research, or, that motivator that you want to focus on there. Like, we really don't want to be kind of reliant on the discount. So can we try and like move it in a different direction? It's that first opportunity for like collaboration and feedback.
Very important, because the client will then get another deliverable, another touch point before their actual creative comes. So we can continue to, ideally within 3 to 4 business days of the kickoff call, have something else to present to them. And I would even recommend, and then I'll cap it off at this, if you are going into the kickoff call and you say, hey, we could have that presentation deck for our plan on the kickoff call. You could, but it's going to take away from collaboration with the client. And you can read the room, but if you want to make sure that the client has their ability to give input, then you would want to wait until after the kickoff call, do any QC or amends to it that way. And you can even kind of soft pitch some of the ideas without the formal deck, and then get buy-in, because the client might hear your idea and go, no, actually, we should do X, Y, and Z, or this or that. And then you can balance the two and add it to the deck, have that extra touch point, continue conversation, keep their mind at ease, and then move into our next episode or next phase, which will be the creative strategy planning process, potentially also execution, potentially also testing. It depends on how much insights we give for the first. So we'll wrap it up there.